My name is Sarah Asmar and my colleague Doha Al Kadamani. We're from the United Nations Environment Program Office for West Asia. We're the regional office for West Asia. So today we're here to discuss how sustainable lifestyles can enhance our mental health. So very quickly an outline. So رح نعطيكم a brief introduction on UNEP and the West Asia office, a historical overview and the current environmental situation, to then move on to our core topics يلي هن climate actions, resource efficiency and sustainable consumption and production. Moving on to the environmental impact of the three major sectors اللي نحن بنركز عليهم يلي هن fashion, food and plastics. To jump to the, if you want, the core of this presentation, how is our mental health affected by climate change? And then what are the actions that can be taken? Again, to repeat later, if you can please scan the QR and fill in the survey. We want this presentation to be as engaging as possible, خصوصا إنه عددنا منه كتير كبير, so there's a lot of room for Q&As, for your intervention, so please feel free to ask us questions as we go. So, let's start with a number, 4,550%. Any idea what this number is? Any guesses?
Increase in carbon emissions.
It's in the title. Okay. There has been a 4,550% increase in the search on how to live a sustainable lifestyle since January 2020. And this is a number that has seen also an increase, especially during COVID, and COVID was such a wake-up call for people actually to reevaluate their lifestyles. And sustainability now is something we hear everywhere that is used and misused a lot of times, but that is at the essence of the future. First question of our survey asks, how much do you think lifestyles have an impact on climate change? خلينا نشوف the responses. Have 70% who think it's a major impact, whereby more than 2/3 of greenhouse gases emissions can be attributed to household consumption and lifestyles, and 25% think it's a minor impact. Luckily, no one thinks it has no impact, so that's a good start. A lot of the times we think as household, as consumers, and we are not responsible for the big numbers. I'm going to show you during this presentation, there is no such thing as a small impact or no responsibility. We each have responsibility at the consumer level, at the household level, at the producer level, especially if we are people, if we have a certain influence, if we have a certain public opinion, we always have to move in this direction. So this was our first question. Going back to the presentation. So, before we start, very quickly, who is UNEP? What do we do? UNEP has been established in 1972, is headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya, and is the global authority that sets the environmental agenda. So we work with 193 member states, and we are the authority that relates to everything that has to do with the environmental agenda. I don't know if you guys have heard of COP27 or the future COP28 that's happening in the UAE, which is the conference of parties. It is also under the UNEP umbrella in a way. We have 7 subprograms, which are climate action, chemicals and pollution action, nature action, science policy, environmental governance, finance and economic transformations, and finally digital transformations. These are interlinked subprograms, so there are a lot of topics that somehow work in different programs. We are focused in 7 regions, so Latin America, Africa, Asia Pacific, New York, Europe, North America, and West Asia. UNEP's mission is to provide leadership and encourage partnerships in caring for the environment by inspiring, informing, and enabling nations and people to improve their quality of life. We cover 12 countries, as you can see, so which are the GCC countries and the Levant area, Yemen, Syria, Palestine, Lebanon, Jordan. Finance and economic transformation, our subprogram, Doha and I, it focuses on the SDG number 12, which is on responsible consumption and production. شو يعني؟ نحن we focus كتير على the importance of consuming and producing responsibly as a way out, or if you want, as one of the solutions to reduce climate change, reduce our impact on nature, and reduce our usage of natural resources. It has three different, if you want, pillars, which is government support. So we work with government on policy action relating to the environment. We focus on capacity building for small and medium enterprises, and most importantly, empower youth for sustainable lifestyle. Our focus is on food waste, fashion and textiles, and plastics, as we mentioned. Over to Doha.
So what is climate change? Can anyone tell me? Just in a few words. طيب, another question. What's the difference between the weather and climate change? Are they the same? No, they're not the same. Can you tell me a bit more before I tell you a bit more?
Okay, weather is the temperature and مثلا the winds during the day أو مثلا a week وهيك. Climate is يعني let's say for example CO2 emissions overall قد ايه عم بيزيدوا ومثلا methane emissions وهيك قصص like gases و how it affects the climate ومثلا الأوزون layer وهيك قصص.
That's very true. So change in the average temperature and cycles of weather over long periods of time. You correctly highlighted in weather is over a period of a day or a week. And then climate change is over a period of long time, how the weather is changing over a period of long time. So in this graph, you can see that right now we have reached 1.26 degrees higher than the pre-industrial era, which is the era, it's when we started production, extraction, and so forth. So we can see in the last 5 decades, population has increased 2-folds, extraction 3-folds, and GDP by 4-folds. So extraction has led to around 90% of biodiversity loss as well. So what are the effects of climate change? You correctly highlighted CO2 concentration has been the highest in the last 2 million years. Sea level rise has increased in the fastest rates in the last 3,000 years. Arctic sea areas are at the lowest level possible, and glaciers are retreating. So these are the effects of climate change, but how do they affect us? Does anyone want to contribute, or we move forward? Go ahead. مظبوط.
ذوبان الثلج الجليد وعندك التصحر مثلا حتى الكليما بلبنان مثلا تغير ما بقى في 4 فصول صار في عندك كثير تغير بالمناخ بلس انه الانترفنشن تبع الانسان مثلا بدبي بالدول العربيه اللي جربوا انه يعملوا امطار اصطناعيه واتسترا كلها اثرت علينا نحن على نمط حياتنا حتى على كل هالتلوث عم يتجمع بالهواء بيرجع بينزل المطر على الارض محمل بهيدي الغازات السامه عم بتاثر على التربه اتسترا كل التفاصيل.
Thank you very much. So as Sarah highlighted when she first started, COP is under UNEP. So COP is the conference of the parties, and last year was COP27. It was held in Egypt, Sharm el-Sheikh, and this year COP28 will be held in UAE. So why is that important for our region? Because Arab states will put forward what their climate priorities are, whether it's mitigation, adaptation, and as you can see here are the main outcomes of COP27. I won't delve much into them, but there's loss and damage, adaptation, and finance, focus on finance. So what I want to highlight is that in COP27 there was a huge engagement of the youth, and one outcome was the initiatives for the youth, the Green Jobs for Youth Pact. So UNEP, along with UNICEF, and ILO, they're going to create 1 million green jobs and advance 10,000 green entrepreneurs to support them. And this pact is still under formation, but hopefully we will bring it forward and engage the students of this university under the Green Jobs for Youth Pact. So moving on to the second question, what questions do you take to combat climate change? Let's see.
No, that's the first one, yeah. Oh.
So the highest percentage is I share my leftovers with family and friends. Okay, so why do you think leftovers are problematic? Before Sarah touches on that. Food waste.
Yeah.
Why is food waste problematic? Not everyone knows. You seem to know.
They decompose مثلا أنه thank you. لأنه they go بالtrash يعني بالنهاية وبيصير في عنا more garbage pile و maybe gases released from garbage, I'm guessing, when you burn them or dispose of them incorrectly وهيك.
Yeah,
Very good answer.
Without even burning, food waste releases methane, which is around 20 times stronger than CO2 gas, and it contributes greatly to climate change. Sarah will touch on that even further in a bit.
There's also the plastic. I saw a lot of answers on single-use plastic.
Oh.
So you have 7 who answered on single-use plastic. I shop consciously. I carpool. Carpool is very important as well.
Transportation, of course.
Individual action is not effective in combating climate change. We hope we can change your mind on that.
Who are the 3 that answered this question? To change your mind, at least. So individual action does matter. Anything we change in our personal lives, changing that in our personal lives, then moving it forward to our parents, and then our surroundings, our community, at least. And sometimes also individual environmental action may bring forward economic profit as well as social benefits, and we'll see how.
A lot of green platforms, companies, or products are always created by someone actually doing this change in their lifestyle first. On to why should we take action here?
In Lebanon.
Yeah.
So, as you correctly mentioned, an increase in 2 degrees of the temperature will result in 40% reduction of snow cover. Of course, this is bad because we all love to ski in Lebanon, but also this is bad because it has great impact on our agricultural sector, which is a booming sector in Lebanon, and المياه الجوفية as well as the sea rise level. So whenever the snow cover is melting, it needs to go somewhere, right? So winter floods can increase by up to 30%, and hot summers will be even hotter. So moving on to the impact of the focus sectors.
Yes. So just to give you a very quick idea, for example, in the fashion and textile industry or the sector, we have an annual material loss of 100 billion due to underutilization of clothes. We use our clothes 36% less and shop 60% more. So the fashion and textile clothing production doubled between 2000 and 2015. And the times of a garment was worn decreased by 36%. We used 215 trillion liters of water only for the fashion industry, and 3.3 billion megatons of greenhouse gases are emitted by the textile industry per year. Just as an information, each pair of jeans, it takes 3,781 liters of water to make 1 pair of jeans. And this water, because it has a lot of chemicals, ends up being wasted. You cannot clean it up. And 9% of textiles account to 9% of microplastics. Do you have any idea what are microplastics?
Like small particles of plastics.
Yes.
We cannot see, we don't know the effect on them in our personal lives if we consume them.
Correct.
Or if we get exposed to them.
Correct. And to complement your answer, it's the first time, last year there was a medical article that showcased for the first time there was microplastics found in human blood. And the dangers of microplastics are major. Let us not forget that plastics come from petroleum. On to food and food waste. So annually, 14% of the food produced for consumption is lost between harvest and the wholesale market. Yani 14% of food waste is lost is lost before it even reaches a retail or a restaurant or your house. 17% of total global food production is wasted. So food waste is food that arrives in perfect shape and condition and then is wasted, pre-consumer or post-consumer waste. And food loss is the amount of products that are lost before they reach, for example, let's say vegetables or produce that becomes inedible or is not healthy. In Lebanon, at home, imagine we each waste 105 kilograms of food per year, which is a lot. At the same time, there is an increase in hunger, and you know that food is becoming more and more expensive. Not to mention that we are a country and a region in general that focuses a lot on imports in terms of food and has water scarcity. And reducing food waste is a priority not only for climate, but also for your own health and for your own benefit. Then we have plastics.
Okay, so every minute, the equivalent of one garbage truck is dumped into our oceans. It's crazy, right? An entire garbage truck is dumped into our oceans. How does that affect us? So the fish, the simplest example, fish eat plastics, we eat fish. This is one way microplastics end up in our body. The simplest way microplastics can affect us. And 7 billion of the 9.2 billion tons of plastics produced up to 2017 became waste, ending up directly in landfill. So instead of that, we should think of reusing these resources because they can be easily reused. And moving on to
World
Environment Day, Sarah will tell you a bit more about that.
Every year we celebrate on June 5th the World Environment Day. This year, the thematic is on beating plastic pollution, #BeatPlasticPollution, and the focus is on finding solutions to reduce and eliminate plastic pollution. Recycling is not always the best answer, and it's not always the answer. Very little is recycled, it costs a lot to recycle, and it's also it uses a lot of energy, it's energy intensive, so it's not always the best option to recycle. We always have to look back at the consumption and at repurposing these products in a different way. We're going to show you, and Doha is going to show you how we actually can do that.
Before we do that, I just wanted to highlight the Global Plastic Pollution Agreement. So last year in March, member states, the 193 member states that Sarah mentioned we work with, they signed an agreement to develop a legally binding agreement to reduce plastic pollution. So imagine the entire world is working to reduce plastic pollution. Right now, the agreement is being developed and it won't be in place till December 2024, but it's in the right direction, hopefully.
And it means it's like a major breakthrough for us or for UNEP, because it means it's the first time countries are going to be held accountable to what they do with plastic waste. So this is very important in our fight to reduce plastic waste.
Yes. So how is our mental health affected by climate change? UNEP has shown that everything from noise to air, chemical pollution affects our mental well-being. And in the next slide, you can see some very alarming figures. 22 million people suffer from chronic noise annoyance, and 6.5 million are affected by a lack of sleep, so sleep disturbances. And of course, in Lebanon, we do suffer from that. A lot of car beeping, a lot of construction. It's not very regulated. People can, so noise is very abundant. And 99% of the global population breathes air that the WHO has deemed not clear enough for us to be breathing. And research shows that around 1 in 3 children has lead in their blood levels that may be associated with decreased intelligence, behavioral difficulties, and learning problems. And these are all things we can avoid. We can avoid having lead in children's blood, by taking the correct procedures and so forth. We can have access to clean air by taking the right procedures. So moving on to explain a bit more, a recent IPCC, so IPCC is responsible for developing all the flagship reports on climate, and it's also under the umbrella of UNEP. So mental health impacts are due to exposure to high temperatures, extreme weather events, climate-related economic and social losses, and anxiety and distress. Can anyone give me an example of anxiety, feeling anxious and feeling distressed because of because of climate change, because of not knowing, if there's going to be a flood tomorrow, or does anyone feel that way?
Have you ever experienced by a show of hands, have you ever experienced anxiety or stress due to weather conditions, rain, floods? Okay. We as humans are used to a certain lifestyle and we are used to a certain system that is important, and it has a domino effect. When it doesn't rain a lot, you don't have enough crops, your agriculture industry is affected, your food is affected, the quality of food, hence the increase in diseases and the necessity for more medication. So when if we, how am I going to say it? If we just decide to just not look at it and stay in ignorance, it's not going to solve an issue and it's only going to make it bigger. The numbers that you are seeing are numbers that are increasing exponentially only recently. Yani this huge change anyways is very recent. Even when we took a look at for example, the fashion industry, it's in the last 20 to 30 years. This increase in consumerism and this link between economic profitability and using excessively the resources has led to all of these problems, which we're going to have to face a day or another. We might as well start acting very, very quickly.
And one way to act is circularity. Has anyone heard of the circular economy?
Any idea what is this? What does it mean?
So the circular economy is a concept that falls under sustainable consumption and production. It's a concept of transforming our current linear, So our current linear economic model. So currently we extract, we take, we make, and we produce and we dispose directly to the end of life of the product. But the circular model, it aims to avoid the end of life stage, avoid producing waste. The very first step is minimizing and preventing waste from being produced. So let's say single-use plastic, we prevent the usage of it, and this is the very first, most important step, I mean. And then going through the circular economy model, let's say, has anyone recently exchanged their phones? صعب شوي هلا. مش recently. Has anyone heard of companies right now, they're actually asking for your old phones back and giving you money? For example, I recently saw Samsung's flyers, and they have mentioned that if you give back your phone, you will get monetary value back. يعني a discount from the new phone that you're going to buy. Apple as well, and they're taking any company's phone. So Samsung, you can give them an iPhone as well. It does not matter. And why is that? Because there's profit from that. They can repair it, they can remanufacture it, they can, so these are all the 9 R's. Let me start by them. So the very first step is reducing by design. What does that imply to you? Like in the design stage of a product, we need to reduce. We need to see how to reduce environmental impacts. We need to see how to reduce anything that may cause adverse effects to the human health as well as to the environment at the very design stage. And then moving on.
You can use the laser pointer.
Yeah.
So الفكرة هي to reduce by design is the orange, if you can see the orange
I can
arrow.
Expand it if that's what you want.
Zoom in.
Yeah.
Okay. Delete the other one.
Yeah.
Voila. Okay, so أول شيء we can see the reducing by design. So this means designing in an enhanced manner that actually requires less, and we can keep it more. يعني instead of producing water bottles, plastic water bottles that are single-use water bottles, we can shift to something that's more sustainable. This is a very basic idea, but there's a lot of room for innovation.
Exactly. And the main goal is to never reach the end of use phase. It's to always repurpose, recycle, remanufacture, refurbish, repair, reuse, reduce, and finally refuse, which is very important. So circularity, it challenges our current linear model, the take-make waste model. And at the core of the circularity concept is life cycle thinking. What is life cycle thinking? So life cycle thinking is going back to reducing by design, thinking of all the stages of the life cycle of a product that we want to create, from extraction to use phase to the end of life phase. And of course, the last point is quite important. It's on natural resource use. So extraction has increased by threefold, as I showed, and it has caused 90% biodiversity loss. So at what cost will we still extract for economic value? We need to dissociate economic value from natural resource use.
To add to what Doha is saying, what you need to know also that now resources or natural minerals and natural resources that are usually found on our planet are becoming depleted. Yani we can't even still think about using these natural resources for economic growth because they are no longer available. Elements such as phosphorus, for example, is one of the elements that is becoming almost obsolete to find. There are a lot of elements like that that are becoming obsolete to find because of our, if you want, a huge extraction. The problem is with human behavior in general that we are extracting, we are producing much more than the planet can take and can withstand. Even in agriculture, for example, poultry, meat, even produce, vegetables. And the thing is, we always have to remember that there's a lot of resources that are inputted in any product. Yani, when I waste an apple, I'm not only wasting the apple, I'm wasting the water and the water that was used, the labor, the land that was used in terms of agriculture, and that in its place took some of the biodiversity in that area. All of the petroleum use and all of the energy that was used so that this apple reaches my doorstep. So we always have to remember that there is no such thing as no impact. Even by you not wasting food, you're already doing enough. Even if you're using your clothes more instead of throwing them away, you are already reducing your carbon footprint, and it's how much you emit carbon not as a person, it's how much you contribute to that. So every small action that you take in your lifestyle does have an impact, and especially when it is rippled, because you are part of a household, so you always can have this effect. Segregating products, making compost, for example, these are very small ideas, but they do have a major impact. And more and more there are companies, and this is what Doha showed you on the green jobs for youth. Being environmentally friendly and going green, that's not the word green as in greenwashing, really going green is the only way forward and the only sustainable way forward that can be coupled with economic growth. All of the companies now have a push towards sustainability. Even big companies that have been in action for years now are shifting into more sustainable models. Whether it's packaging, whether it's the way they deliver, there's a lot of actions that can be taken. And as youth, we focus on youth thinking, and we believe that youth are the driver for change because they are more aware of the situation and are going to have to live with this situation in the future. There is more importance, and they are understanding the importance, the main importance of that. They are living it, as we talked about the anxiety of having to live in new, let us say, climate conditions that we are not used to. There's a lot of potential for innovation to be able to sustain and fix this problem before we reach 2 degrees. Next slide. Okay, yes. So just to give you an idea of what we do and how you can benefit from what you are doing in our work on the environment and climate change. One of the things that we have put in place since 2021 is the West Asia Sustainable Fashion Academy. I'm not sure if at your university you have a fashion design segment. So, for example, we've worked with LAU in Beirut. We've worked with the University of Technology and Applied Sciences in Oman. We're working with many universities in the region to shift mentality. For example, at LAU, we now have 2 courses that are embedded in the curriculum on sustainability in the fashion industry. And now, all of the designs of the students have a 50% grade on if they are eco-friendly, if they can be reused, and if they are produced from virgin or non-virgin material. Some of the workshops that we had is the Zero Waste Marathon last year with LAU. We're having it in a 2nd edition this year. We had an eco-innovation and sustainable textiles, so this targeted small and medium enterprises. We had a West Asia Future Lab for Innovation and Policy, so here we focus on the policy factor. This academy, it targets a lot of different people, young fashion designers, fashion students, consumers, youth in specific, textile suppliers and producers, NGO, and the private sector. Another project and another initiative we are working on is the Recipe of Change campaign. This campaign was also launched in the end of 2021 with 10 chefs from the West Asia region. Here we focus on the topics of food waste and on reducing at the source. Yani before we get into what to do with the waste. To add to that, we recently appointed the renowned chef Layla Fathallah as advocate on food waste for the West Asia region. She will be our advocate and our face in this campaign for the next 3 years. And we aim through her appointment to bring more attention on food waste and raise awareness. Finally, last year, Arc-en-Ciel, I'm sure you've heard of Arc-en-Ciel, won a laureate, which is the Champions of the Earth. It's the highest environmental honor. They were given the award because of the huge work that they are doing specifically on recycling medical waste. Because medical waste is one of the most difficult, and only there's the health, if you want, aspect of waste. Then there's Nudawir.
So Nudawir is a pilot project in the Marim Khail Jamaizi area. So what we're trying to do is to gather insights and knowledge on how to incorporate the circular economy into a neighborhood. So we're trying to use restaurants as an entry point to create food circles, so encourage local food production, encourage these restaurants to pay attention to their energy efficiency, water savings, pay attention, take all the steps to become genuinely sustainable businesses, and at the same time to see if that would provide viable economic profit. And once this pilot project ends, hopefully we will see if it's scalable, and right now things are looking really good. So let me give you some figures from the project. So Nudawir has collected almost 5,500 kilograms of organic waste from only 4 restaurants in September. In 1 month, 4 restaurants, 5,500 kilograms of organic waste, of food waste. So for example, one partnering restaurant produces 20 kilograms of food waste and 4 to 7 kilograms of plastics per day. So let's say we want to scale it up to, you need to multiply this number by at least 3,000, because there's at least 3,000 restaurants all over Lebanon, or all over Beirut, let's say. So these numbers are quite interesting. And also, do you know why it's important to gather these data, gather this knowledge? So why is it important for us to know that one restaurant produces 20 kilograms of food waste and one restaurant produces 4 to 7 kilograms of plastic waste?
To predict the effect of food waste or plastic waste, to see how much each country is producing, for example.
That's true. Also because when we first started, we mentioned SDG 12, which is responsible consumption and production. Under SDG 12, there are many targets, and one of them, target 12.3, for example, is to halve food waste by 2030. So to have food waste, you need to have a baseline, right? You need to know how much you're producing right now. So we need to know, we need the data at our households, for example, not only at restaurants, to know how much we produce, to see how much we can reduce and how much environmental benefits we can gather. And also there's SDG 12.5 on recycling, which relates to plastics as well as food, because food is being turned into compost as well. So these restaurants have been collecting their food waste, turning it into compost. These composts will be then given back to the farmers who will, you see the circle. So it's restaurants, compost, farmers, they give back to the restaurants. What are the obstacles you face to change your consumption habits? Let's see.
Okay. Lack of awareness of sustainable options, so this is 30.8%. Limited retail availability of sustainable options, 23%. And economic challenges, sustainable options tend to be more expensive, 46%. Okay, very interesting answers. Maybe if we look at the lack of awareness, or the first smaller parts, which are lack of awareness and economic limited retail availability, this is where, as we discussed earlier, that there's room for innovation and room for new things happening, which also falls under the 46% that I think that there are economic challenges. It's true that being sustainable in general is more expensive. And this is why there is a lot of need for new options, new products, and new businesses to have, if you want, more of a competition, and that this would push prices to go down, making sustainability more accessible. What we call the power of youth. We believe that youth are usually curious, innovative, they are active, they raise their voice, they even push to action in a lot of places. 2 to 3 billion new consumers will be urban youth by 2050, and this is why we focus on youth, who are the potential new consumer. Youth will set consumption patterns, and they are tomorrow's leaders and drivers for change. What are the actions that you can take? Reduce, reuse, repair, recycle. Even at the core of all of that, or at the start, think about the way you shop. Think why you are shopping. For example, when you go to the supermarket, don't go to the supermarket hungry. Think about what you are buying, how much you need it. In your fridge, put products that are going to be expire soon at the beginning. Think of a leftover day where you actually use your leftovers. Before we reach the waste part, you have to remember prevention. Prevention is the most important part. You have to stay informed and share. Share your clothes, share anything that you do not need, your electronics. Today, you can recycle relatively everything. Electronics, metal, glass, clothing. There's a lot of things, and there's even more and more initiatives and even companies that are, I saw the other day a company called, or an NGO called Yalla Return, that engages people to actually bring in their garments or their waste and get money out of it. There are a lot of options. Even the Nudawir and Nusanid, they have this option. For example, you want to compost, you get your compost to Nusanid, and instead they give you a coupon or a voucher to use.
For the local economy. We're trying to have a circle in the local economy.
Finally, Doha, if you can explain.
Yes, so we talked about COP27 and how the Green Jobs for Youth Pact was established. So there's also the My Sustainable Living Challenge, which is an online free game that will be starting towards mid-May, and it's very interesting. It's a challenge to show you how you can live your life more sustainably without having, so a lot of people said that it's because of economic, the economic part is hindering you from living more sustainably. But instead of throwing out a shirt that is ripped, sewing it up, repairing it, going back to our old ways rather than throwing it out. But right now it's cheaper to throw it out maybe and buy a new one. But we should consider that just sewing our clothes up, sharing our food waste, different actions that we can take. You can learn more about that through the My Sustainable Living Challenge. And again, as we stressed today, every action counts, no matter how small. Even starting with the very first action, prevention. This is the cheapest option. It's for free. It's just your decision.
Yes. Yeah? Room for
it depends
questions.
on lifestyle and culture. As you previously mentioned about sewing the shirt.
Yes.
It depends how we're born, how we're raised, and about the lifestyle. These years, the youth, they usually don't sew their T-shirts. They buy new stuff. They usually buying. They're shopping.
Especially because of consumerism, or the way right now we're living. بالconsumption لنا, especially with clothes, more is better, you know. For trends on TikTok, for example, they always have this مثلا $2,000 I bought from Shein. Shein is known for being very unsustainable.
Fast fashion in general is
and
very unsustainable.
they underpay their workers. Really, the people that spend a lot of money on companies like these are making the problem even worse.
True. This is why we talk about consumer responsibility. We need to understand that we are responsible and we need to take action. And this is why we focus on youth. Imagine if you are able to make this change, which is much easier for you than for your parents, let us say, it will always have an impact at home. Sometimes even kids can affect if they come from school with a new idea and then they can implement it at home. Recycling, segregating, reusing, reducing, and understanding the impact of even the simplest of purchases. What's important, or what you have to keep in mind, is that there is no such thing as a small impact. We really push you to educate yourself more. There's a lot of resources online through our website, UNEP.org, or through our social media channels, UNEP West Asia, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. There's always information that's being shared, and it's always shared in a simplified manner that makes it easier. If you have any questions also, please feel free. We are very happy to be here again. You can scan this QR code and check our website or all of our social media platforms. And yes, that would be it.
Sorry.
Yes.
I want to ask if the compost you make is free for the farmers, or should they pay for it?
I have zero idea.
Yes, so the compost is free for the farmers. It's an agreement. Yani. We're trying to establish an agreement between the restaurants and their own farmers. Yani. The restaurants are linking us with their own farmers, the farmers that they buy their produce from. And it's beneficial for the restaurants to give them the compost to ensure that their produce is of higher quality and so forth.
And how you make money?
How do you make money? Okay, so the idea is that the plastics gathered from the restaurants are being exported, they're being sold. This money is going and creating vouchers for the restaurants to spend. So it's all NGO work, it's not profitable for the NGO itself, but it will be profitable for the business. It will be profitable for the farmer. It's not about making money for us, but it's rather for benefiting them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very good question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
السنة بدنا نعمل ورك شوب عن الفاشن وكيف الطلاب يقدروا يرجعوا يعوزوا الثياب يستعملوهم هيك. اكيد سنة الجاي بنعمل ورك شوب خصوصي عن هيدا الشيء.
Sure.
متخيل مش هيك بيطلع حلو انه
Yeah.
بدهم يزيدوها بالسجاجة ديجا قلت لها جاستين حطيها دغري لسنة الجاي السنة ما لحقناها بالفعل. بقى اكيد سنة الجاي رح نشتغل اكثر على الموضوع و very interesting عن جد interesting كثير.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Yes.
نعمل ريسايكل يعني ما عدا الازاز عم نجمعهم. في شركه بتجي بتاخذهم المصاري اللي بتدفعهم للكنيسه بتحط فوقهم بلس يعني فوا دو وعم يتوزعوا وعم ينشرى فيهم اكل للعيال.
That's very interesting.
بقى هيدي فكره كانت كثير مهمه.
هي الكونسبت تبع circularity of everything. It always there's a loop. يعني when you close the loop,
Exactly.
it's always beneficial. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for sharing.
Yes.
Okay, and I have a question. Isn't it better to first start from the beginning, from step number one, and مثلا target the companies, the big companies, with factories that are creating all of this pollution in the first place? And when I heard, from what I heard, individual actions don't really impact as much as those big factories and agriculture and companies.
Yes and no. It's a two. There's a very complex answer. أول شيء, you have to remember the consumer part. You know, in the law of economics, it's supply and demand. By the simple idea of demanding something that is more eco-friendly, that is more responsible, you are sending out a signal. Those companies' profits are being reduced and revenues are being reduced. So ipso facto, they are going to have to change the way they do business to remain, if you want, viable. On the other hand, it's not one action. We work on all of the different, this is why we showed you, for example, we have the policy action which focuses on governments implementing and creating policies. And this is why for UNEP, having this legally binding policy on plastic is very, very, very important. But one segment of the society is not enough. This is why we try to target different segments in different ways. Today, for example, when it's more profitable for, let's say for a restaurant to actually throw their waste. One time I was at a restaurant and I saw that there was a lot of food that wasn't even touched by consumers, but they are obliged to throw away. My question was like, why do you not share it to charity? Their answer was, and it was very valid, if for any reason someone falls sick, we are held liable. So for a company, for example, this is a very small idea. When for a restaurant it's better or cheaper or safer to throw away food than give it out, you know that something is wrong. So this is where the government and the authorities have to play a role. You as a consumer, you play a role by the choices that you make because you send out a signal. And whenever it's coupled by a lot of people thinking in the same way, the signal is amplified. So it's a lot of work between different companies and also different, segments, and also the creation and the emergence of all of these new sustainable and green companies is also challenging the older companies to rethink in a different way. At the base, it's always prevention. It's if you want, as a step one, it's reducing by design, designing products that are that have a very small impact and using this product in a smart way.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.